As the number of COVID-19 infection rates rise and people struggle to cope with illness and death, statistics show a rise in mental health conditions. Joining us to discuss this is Dr. Akili Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, ma'am. How are you this evening?
Great, great. What are the statistics saying about the state of mental health in America?
Wow, they actually are saying some very negative things. We've had an increase in just about every aspect of mental health issues in this country. We're talking about depression, anxiety, drug use, suicide, domestic violence, murder, a lot of cases of police being called for disputes that has significantly increased during this pandemic, which is tied to the overwhelming nature that this pandemic has had on the public. There are, of course, aspects of the society which we know are failing, and there are aspects of this society that are so demonic and so full of debauchery that the people in general are not satisfied. And when it comes to this biblical type pandemic, people are looking for answers and they're not finding it in this society. And as with this vaccine, there's so much propaganda to keep our minds in certain areas. For instance, the number of deaths that have happened with the coronavirus in the United States is still less than those that died with heart attacks, still less than those that have died from cancer. But we have been so inundated with this information of this pandemic that many people are feeling overwhelmed and feeling that they are in somewhat of a purgatory. So in general, those are the statistics. I don't know their specific numbers, but every one of those categories that I mentioned, suicide, domestic violence, drug use, those are all up like 10, 15, 20%.
Now, what has happened since the pandemic? What would your thoughts, or what would you say? Would it be, would the increase be contributed or attributed to the quarantine, or could it be just the propaganda only? What are your thoughts on why this increase has happened and continues to rise?
Yes, that's an extremely interesting and important question, because there are many studies that are saying that in general, even before this pandemic, that people that live in congested environments, the inner city type situations, that lends to a leaning towards having anxiety, depression, anger problems, not being able to feel like you can calm down, relax. And so that was a lot of the information that was out before the pandemic. And now that we're in the pandemic over a year now in the United States, and of course, this is a global issue, but I'm speaking directly to the United States, people are starting to feel the effects of not being able to go outside. There's so much fear that some people are afraid to even leave their homes, as many of us have obviously seen when you're driving down the street and there are people in their cars with a mask on.
Right.
That is an aspect of fear. That's not scientific that they're doing that. And so I think there are a lot of people that are afraid to go outside and enjoy some outside time. Most of the times when I pass by parks, there aren't very many people in the parks, where if we understood how to take care of ourselves, we could go to the park and do some exercise, some walking,
Right.
getting some sunshine, and just make sure that you maintain your social distancing. And so that aspect, I think, is a large part of it. And then the other is the inability of a lot of people, because of the fear again, to interact with their own family members. And there should be some distancing that we do. That makes sense in a pandemic. But the point is that is affecting people, that they're not able to be physically in the communities that typically supported them prior to the pandemic.
And what are your suggestions to people who are struggling with their mental health?
Yes, I would say, first of all, that we have to put things in context. Personally, I put my love, my fear, my admiration for the God that I serve primary to everything that I do. I try to pray before any time I have a consultation. I try to keep my prayers up every day, especially in a time like this where we have more time to set our schedule and not be taken out too much away from your house. But the point that I'm getting to is that whoever the God is that you serve, you should get into understanding what that scripture says about the time that we're living in. I personally believe that Minister Louis Farrakhan is the mouthpiece of the God that I serve. And so when he had his July 4th, 2020 presentation to the entire world, he gave us some information. He told us what to do to try to grasp onto the reality of God. And so if we are feeling in despair, if we are feeling like we have no way out of this situation, my suggestion is that you go to God. If you're a Christian, then go and read the book that talks about what these times are. If you claim to Judaism, then go to the Old Testament and read the different stories. And then I'll finalize that with this. When I read the Bible or the Quran, it talks about Abraham, talks about Noah, talks about Lot, talks about Jesus, talks about Job, talks about a lot of different prophets. In the Quran, there are a few different ones, Ahad, Tamud. These are situations and people that have talked about situations like this, where the governments, oppressive governments, would have people in these very peculiar situations. And the people of God always looked like they were crazy. They were always considered as just talking crazy, and we don't need to follow those foolish people. In today's time, you really need to consider that the generalized media, that the information that you're hearing spewed from the most common places are probably not the best information for you. You probably need to do a little more digging. And then when you start finding information that starts to benefit your life, like How to Eat to Live by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, if you get into that book and it starts to improve your health, now you have something that you can hold on to. Well, at least I know this is true. Let me go check out some more information by this man and see what else he taught that may be beneficial to me, my family, and the community that I serve.
Right. Now, my last question may be a little hard for some to do, which is to identify that they're struggling with mental health issues. For those of us in families with or congested areas, if you see someone in your family that might be struggling with a mental health issue, what are some of the things that you should look out for?
Yeah, so that is extremely important. And I always use the reality of what do you know about this person that is your family member, the person that is your loved one? What is their routines? When you see them, what is kind of their countenance? Are they usually upbeat? Or are they usually kind of laid back? Those are the standards that we use to evaluate people that we love. And so if you're in the midst of a person and you see that their countenance is a little lower than you typically see them, that's a perfect avenue to just ask a question. We don't have to ask any label surrounded questions. Just ask questions like, how are you doing? You seem a little different today. Hey, you want to talk? Is there something that's bothering you? Is there something I can help you with? And make sure that we're sincere, because when we're talking about the mental health of people in general, inclusive of those who we love, that we are in the same family of, you should ask the question with the desire to maybe have to spend some time with this person, perking up your ears and doing a lot of listening and a little less talk and a little less giving of advice. Because sometimes the biggest aspect, and this is based on studies, sometimes the biggest aspect of a person's mental health difficulty is they just want to be listened to. They have something that they need to divulge that would actually help them, right? Start to get rid of some of the thoughts that may be containing them in a way that they don't feel freed. And so we should have that type of care and concern to ask those questions, but make sure we're willing to not ask the question just as a byproduct of, let me just speak and move on about my business. If we're truly concerned about somebody's mental health, we have to have a dedication and a sacrifice to say, okay, this might take a half a day. This might take a couple of hours. This might take me having to go back and check with this person over the next couple of days. Because if we don't take that stance, it might be something worse than winding up in a facility or something worse than that. So if we're going to be serious about it and we want to introduce potential help, we have to be ready to be that help that that person needs.
Right. Now, speaking of identifying mental health issues within ourselves and within others, one group that we tend to overlook is the children. Their language or communication may not be as advanced as some adults. So, what types of questions would you suggest parents or brothers or sisters, aunts, uncles ask a child that they might fear is dealing with a mental health issue?
Yes, yes. That's wow. That's a profound question. I would say that what I said in the last answer is appropriate, and we have to turn up that patience dial, because you have to take your time when you're listening to a child who may not necessarily have the ability to express what is the problem. But if you take the time to slow down and be patient and listen, maybe you can tune into the way you were as a child. I mean, especially if we're talking about family members, we may be able to tap into that child and understand what they're saying, even though they don't know how to express it very well and express it in a way that everybody else might understand it. But again, that takes patience, and it takes you having some consideration of what are the possible things that could be affecting this child. A child doesn't understand the reality of a viral infection spreading through the air. A child doesn't necessarily understand the reality of what we say when we say somebody died, somebody's in the hospital. They may have some, but I'm talking about young children. They don't necessarily have the connection to what that really means. And so it's going to take some effort on our part to listen, and then not necessarily always want to explain everything so that we think they understand it, but just to explain what it is that they express to us and make sure we stay within the realm of where their understanding is. But we start trying to make ourselves seem important or try to make ourselves seem as if we know so much. Sometimes we'll lose children because they're not necessarily interested in what you know or how important you are. They're interested in knowing that you care enough to listen to them and to try to understand. A lot of times that will make a child feel amazing. And those are some of the ways that you can greatly change in a quick manner a child's mental health, is by making them feel like they're special, making them feel like they're heard, and making them feel like they were important enough for you to stop all the things that you typically push them away for, and spend some time with them. That would be amazing to a young person's mental health status.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Akili, for joining us today and for your wonderful insight as always.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. When we return, Netfa Freeman of the Black Alliance for Peace will be on to talk about the Pan-African Community Action Plan. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
Black Alliance for Peace and the Pan-African Community Action Plan are standing in solidarity with struggling Black and Brown workers. Joining us is Netfa Freeman with the Black Alliance for Peace to discuss this further. Greetings, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Your organization, Black Alliance for Peace, and its members, including the Pan-African Community Action Plan, are bringing attention to the billions of people still struggling under global capitalism, militarism, and colonialistic regimes. What types of initiatives have you been involved with?
Mm-hmm. So I'm a member of Black Alliance. Both. Black Pan-African Community Action is the organization. We're based in Washington, D.C., and we're one of several organizations that are a member organization of the Black Alliance for Peace. Pan-African Community Action started a little bit before Black Alliance for Peace in November 2015. We're emerging, you could say, out of what most people know as the Black Lives Matter movement and this extrajudicial killings and brutality by police. And then Black Alliance for Peace, about maybe a year or two after, we was founded and created to address militarism and war and in all forms of imperialism by the U.S. in particular, but also by what we refer to as the pan-European patriarchal capitalist patriarchy and around the world. So it was all the Western powers and the NATO powers and the forces. And so to get right to some specifics in terms of your question, so when Pan-African Community Action started, one of our main campaigns, and it's still the main campaign, is what we refer to community control over the police. So we've based on the Black radical tradition and the Black Panther Party's campaign for community control of the police. We're taking that up where people would be the most marginalized working class of our people, local communities, would take control of our communities, and also that includes these, public safety. So we would be able to address, statutorily speaking, through a ballot initiative, and also through people being organized, what public safety looks like, being able to hire, fire, set priorities and policies around what would normally be called policing in our communities. And then also, as members of Black Alliance for Peace, we've taken up Black Alliance for Peace has several right now, as we've grown and expanded several programs, but related directly to PACA's one is also abolishing the 1033 program that militarizes police forces across the country. It's the 1033 program is known as that authorizes Department of Defense to transfer military equipment to local different police forces around the country. And then also the shut down AFRICOM, the U.S. Africa Command in Africa. We're also part of the coalition to close all foreign bases. So we also, in addition to wanting to shut down AFRICOM or working to shut down AFRICOM, we also work for and believe that all of the over 800 or so military bases, U.S. military bases across the world, need to be shut down. And when we talk about militarism and military bases, we're almost scratching the surface when it comes to U.S. imperialism in all its forms, which is also one of the things, just in general, what we're trying to confront.
Thank you. And you've just named a number of issues that the Black Alliance for Peace is working on or has spoken out about. Speaking of militarization of police, the prison industrial complex, its torture and confinement of political prisoners, and ending the brutal sanctions against nations that reject U.S. imperialism. What are your views on the International Commission of Inquiry's recent panel on systemic racist police violence?
Mm-hmm. Well, we concur with the findings. It's right along in the line of, again, we could refer back, like we were talking about the Black radical tradition, and back in the 1950s, we also took a number of people, the case of African people, Black people in the U.S. to the United Nations, and then we charged genocide in 1951, led by W.B. Du Bois and so many other people, George Crockett, and then also, so now fast forwarding, we're in a moment where even the Commission, the United Nations, is taking up and doing studies in 2016, also PACA, our organization, Pan-African Community Action, were the anchor group for the United Nations working group of experts on people of African descent coming to the U.S. in 2016 to look at the human rights abuses, conditions of African people in the U.S. And so they brought them to Washington, D.C. and a number of other places, and they had similar findings. You know, the finding of this commission was that this is tantamount to crimes against humanity. And that the finding was that the United States, well, the police departments, which I think, you know, we might have a little issue there in terms of how we get redress, but police departments need to become under investigations of the International Criminal Court, which we don't disagree that there's a lot of egregious things police departments do. It's just a matter of how we look at getting redressed and how that is. We believe that it's the collective humanity, the collective masses organized and making the most the challenges, demands that directly address our condition is really what's needed. I think these bodies, you know, while it's very good and it exposes things and gives us political education around and gives us rallying points for campaigns, I don't know how much power they would have to actually, you know, enforce anything.
Now, is the U.S. police force being used as a domestic army for capitalists and neo-colonialists?
Mm-hmm. That's the origin of it. I mean, if we look at it, and I think it's happily so that it's much more known now that the history of and origins of the earliest U.S. police come out of the slave patrols in the South, and you know, to put down insurrections, which is what we're, you know, tantamount to, you know, the workers and wildcat strikes now, and also in the North, put down insurrections and catch, you know, escaped Africans, enslaved Africans. And then in the North also, and this is where we see it refining, the private security agencies. These are the origins, the beginnings of the history of the U.S. police. And so now under public, not really even public, but under state, they're an extension of the state, which is here to, in this settler colonial country, the three hydras of settler colonialism in the U.S. and basically anywhere are it's white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy, and the police are there to enforce that. Now we're in a movement and a historical point in time of what was referred to as neoliberalism, the age of neoliberalism, privatization, austerity, you know, commodification of things, and, you know, seeking, you know, private solutions to things, which we can see in the pandemic, is that the state, and we're seeing what would be known as a surplus population. People who cannot fit into the shrinking economy that capitalism has that's based on profit before people. And so now they have to deploy in a militarized fashion now, because we're seeing militarized police and increasing of militarization. In fact, even this Biden administration has increased it in the short time that it's been here. While everyone was focusing on Trump, the Biden administration has increased military transfers of equipment, that they're having to increasingly resort to the militarized policing to keep the colonized subjects in check, and that would be us. We see that after the Derek Chauvin, you know, verdict and everything.
Now, speaking of just the police, previously when we had you on, we spoke about Haiti and the situation over there. The U.S. Biden-Harris administration has shown a lack of commitment to the Haitian people and are propping up seemingly what is to be seen as a puppet government. What's the significance of May 1st for the poor and for the workers in Haiti?
That's a very important question. I think the significance is huge, and people in this country were were dissuaded from understanding May Day, as is commonly known, where the laboring classes have claimed May 1st as May Day, International Workers' Day, from an incident actually that started in the United States in the late 1800s. But the United States, because it's so committed to capitalism and neoliberalism, it doesn't really talk about May Day, and so it's grown tremendously in other countries, and Haiti in particular, which we actually, we probably mentioned before how it was the first republic, democracy in the world, actually, and to abolish slavery, but also its history of resistance, not only to overthrow French colonialism, but also insisting over the decades against U.S. Neocolonialism, all the way, having to resist the U.S. occupation and whatnot. We're talking about the laboring classes in Haiti. So Haiti has constantly, and through their resistance over the decades, has proven, symbolized the an uncompromising resistance of the laboring people against neocolonialism and imperialism.
Now, May 1st is also the deadline that the United States agreed to last year to pull out of Afghanistan. Will the U.S. leaving Afghanistan end the suffering of the Afghani people?
Well, first, we don't believe they've already proven that they're not even going to leave, and they haven't left. They're still leaving people behind, and then some troops behind, and that's not even counting the special operations forces and their mercenaries and whatnot in Afghanistan. But at least it was if they did leave, which really right now, because they haven't left and they're claiming this tie to September, this pushing it back to September 11th, is doing a couple of things. It's reneging and dishonoring the agreement that they made, which we've seen already has consequences according to how the Taliban has responded and responded to that, and then a breaking of the agreement. And it also ties it, to this propaganda of tying it to September 11th, as if it was for some reason that was why the United States is in Afghanistan, which is not.
Right.
But the problem is that even if, the Afghan people in Afghanistan will have its problems no matter what, the United States has certainly exacerbated those problems. They have not solved anything. They've made it much more worse. But the precondition for the people of Afghanistan of solving their problems has to be for the United States to leave without any kind of preconditions or anything. It has to be that. If it won't solve their problems, it is still the precondition for a solution to their problems. They can't solve them as long as the United States remains there and the capacity of the thing.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman, for joining us again and for all of your insight on these worldly affairs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's pause again for a word from our sponsors. Afterward, Derris Muhammad will be on to discuss his group, ManUp Flint. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App, NNV News.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline memorializes the late, great DMX. Last week, DMX's life was celebrated at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Large crowds gathered to honor the legend. They were there to remember a man who wasn't afraid to express his pain with the world. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke via Zoom to the large audience. He delivered words of comfort, wisdom, and guidance to everyone under the sound of his voice. DMX will live on. This FCN volume number 29 edition features the middle page article is a transcript of what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said at the memorial. To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the NNVnews.com Final Call cover report.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
Please make sure you leave your comments and questions in the comment section below. Follow us on Facebook, National Network View, and make sure to check us out on Twitter as well, National Network View. This is Sergio Gutierrez with National Network View, signing off.
ManUp and Peacekeepers are walking the streets, connecting with the people and teaching strategies for violence intervention, peacekeeping, and unity. Joining us is Derris Muhammad with ManUp to talk to us more about his groups. Greetings, sir. There you are. Okay. Yes.
I'm ready.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, ma'am.
How long has ManUp been active?
Well, we first came into existence maybe 7 years ago. And at the time, we was dealing with just people that was addicted to drugs. We was working out of a rehab. And I was acting as a recovery coach. But since then, it has grown to become a community group dealing with young people and intervening in violence and mischievous things in our community. So it's been on that aspect maybe 6 or 7 months. Me and student minister Derris Muhammad of Flint combined ManUp with Peacekeepers. And we've been in existence maybe close, a little under a year now.
Good. Now, what inspired you to take interest in this age group of young men? I'm assuming that these young men are between the ages of about 10 to 18.
Yep, and even younger.
Okay.
But it came from our young men. They growing up, being pimps, thugs. This is not just words. It's a belief system. It's a behavior. It's something that they process into and indoctrinated with. I mean, it's so bad that some of the young brothers were getting to the point where they believe that that's what black is. Anything that's destructive is what black is. You ask some of the young brothers, some people tell brothers, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer. They say, well, in the projects, we ain't never seen that. So we don't have no idea that could ever happen, but I know I can be a drug dealer because that's real. It's right up the street. All the men in my family, that's what they are. All the men in my community, that's what they are. So they begin to believe that this is black. This is what black people are. So we rallying men to teach these young men that that's a lie. That's what we was made to be. Somebody made us that way. We teaching them who made us to be that way, why they made us to be that way. And we have examples in front of them of this ain't the only way. We in this one to new black men. We got a program coming up this week where we're going to honor the common man in our community, basketball coaches, teachers, and educators. And we're trying to make it possible where young black men in our community will be able to reach out and touch these type of men, walk with them, sit with them, eat with them, learn from them. So they won't just be exposed to what America would like black men to be exposed to.
Right. Now, what are some other topics that you cover in your mentorship program? I know you said we're working to give them a different idea of what a black man is supposed to do and be. What are some of the other things that you might touch on with these young men?
Well, knowledge itself is number one. And sometimes that entails a lot of things. So some of the 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old boys that's in the group, we teach them how to keep their pants up, how to iron their pants, how to look men in the eye when they're shaking their hands, how to open the doors for their mother. We're going all the way back to the basics with the young brothers. This has been missing in their household. This has been missing in their community. They don't identify with it. And some of the older teenage boys, we teach them, we go a little deeper with them. We teach them how drugs became available to us and how they can take that same energy that they put into that and put it in the lawn care, put it in the power wash, put it into anything that you can do for self. You don't have to just be on these streets trying to make it that way because that's disruptive. And we teach them, we do it through sports. Sometimes we have those up there just tutoring who kind of slow in math, slow in reading. We address them problems as well. We're dealing with the whole person. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad said that the black man had to be totally remade over. And that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. Now, what do you need for your group? Are you accepting food items, clothing items, donations? Are there any necessities that you need to help you continue to service these boys?
Main thing we need was we trying to get together here in Flint is a home. We've been going to different churches. We've been meeting in different locations. We're trying to get a permanent home, which will be our home base, and we can serve as many young men as we want. That's our number one need. Finances is always are needed, especially when they come from the right places. So we don't reject finances coming from places that want to control what we do and how we do it. They can keep that. And anything that can help families, food, clothing, and all that, we accept that as well. But the number one thing we need is people. Solid people who on the other side, who overcame something or living a good life, and they Black. We need that. That's our most important need.
Now, I understand that you are on Facebook. How can our viewers reach you if they want to donate their time or money to the boys?
Or they can reach me at, if they want my address, they can reach me 2725 North Chevrolet. Send anything to that address, Flint, Michigan, 48504. Or you can reach me by phone, which is 810-956-0455.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing more about your work with the boys and what the boys are doing over the summer.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today and tuning into National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.